Chapter 2, Charge Separation. By the fourth night, Ethan's guild had a theory that he'd secretly quit the game. Dario, level check. Minu, 11. Priya, 12. Dario, 12. Ethan. Ethan, 2. Dario, 2. Dario, we left you at the tutorial 4 days ago. Minu is the old man holding you hostage. Blink twice. Ethan, I'm learning something. Priya, he's role-playing. Ethan, I'm not role-playing. Dario, he's role-playing a man with no levels. He was sitting cross-legged on the threshold terrace at the time, in the dead hours before dawn, game dawn. It was 11 p.m. in his bedroom, with his staff across his knees, and a wool cloak in his lap that he had bought, with most of his starting silver, from a tailor NPC who clearly thought he was insane. The wool was Aldrich's idea. Everything lately was Aldrich's idea. The second lesson had begun, the night after the first, with the old man handing him a rod of polished amber. You failed at heat, Aldrich said. So we will not begin with heat. Heat is the crowd doing everything at once, a mob. Mobs are hard to persuade. We will begin instead with the single most reliable desire in all the world. He nodded at the rod. Rub it on your sleeve. Ethan looked at the amber, looked at the old man, rubbed the rod on his woolen sleeve like a man polishing a doorknob. Now hold it over the dust. He did. Fine grit leapt up off the flagstone and clung to the amber, a tiny beard of dust, defying gravity with casual insolence. Every child in every village has seen this, Aldrich said. Almost none of them ever asks the only question worth asking. What moved? The dust didn't decide anything. The amber didn't decide anything. So what moved? And Ethan, who had a degree in electrical engineering, who designed inverters for a living, who had answered this exact question on an exam a decade ago, felt the answer arrive not as a memory, but as a key turning. Charge, he said. You rubbed some of the crowd loose. The amber stole a layer of the small ones, the outermost ones. Now it has too many, the wool has too few, and everything nearby gets pulled toward the imbalance. He turned the rod slowly. It's not that the amber wants the dust. It's that the world hates a difference and moves to erase it. Aldrich's eyebrows had climbed a very small distance, which Ethan was beginning to recognize as the old man's equivalent of applause. The guild's textbooks, Aldrich said. Call lightning the wrath of the storm god Vaya. The better textbooks, the ones out of print, call it this. The world erasing a difference all at once. He took the amber back. Here is your path, engineer. Heat was a mob. This is one desire, one direction, one argument. You will not command anything. You will simply make a difference somewhere and let the world erase it. The world does the work. You only write the invoice. You only write the invoice. Ethan had laughed out loud, alone on a mountain, at midnight, at physics. In the valley below, some level 9 warrior had probably heard it and shivered. The practice was the miserable part, exactly as advertised. The texture, he'd started calling it the grain, because crowd felt too alive, and the official term, the one the game itself had taken its name from, was the void, which felt too grand for a thing you could hold in the air over your palm. The grain could be touched with attention alone. That much the game gave every magus for free. It was the whole basis of casting. Assisted casters touched it for a quarter second. The seal did the rest, and they never felt anything at all. Touching it deliberately and moving something was different. His first 100 attempts at charge separation accomplished nothing except a headache and a new personal record for focus strain warnings. He was trying to grab electrons, visualizing them, little marbles, scooping them from one place to another. It didn't work. It didn't work in a specific, instructive way. The grain slid around his attention like sand around a finger. You couldn't hold a piece of it. It wasn't pieces. On the fifth night, he stopped trying to grab and remembered the amber. The amber hadn't grabbed. The amber had just been there, being amber, being the kind of material that held its outer crowd tighter than wool held its own. The rubbing only brought them into contact. The theft happened because of what the two materials were: a gradient, an affinity, a slope down which charge rolled on its own. You never shout. You find what the thing already wants to do, and you build it a path. So instead of scooping, he tried tilting. He rested his attention on the grain between his two hands, held a foot apart, wool cloak wrapped around the left one, because ritual mattered even when you knew it was ritual, and instead of commanding anything to move, he simply described a slope. Made the left side, in some language of attention he could not have explained to anyone lower. Made being on the right cost more than being on the left. Not a command, a price difference. For 4 nights, nothing. And then, on the fourth night, at 2:13 a.m. real time, with his focus half broken and his form sloppy, and his mind wandering toward the fact that he had a design review in 7 hours. The grain tipped. It was the smallest sensation in the world. A static prickle across his right palm, a cold breath across the left. And between his hands, in the dark mountain air, a hair-thin thread of blue-white light snapped into existence and was gone, with a tick like a knuckle cracking. Ethan sat very still. Text rose at the edge of his vision, and it was wrong. He'd seen the spell-learning text 100 times over his friend's shoulders, seen it 4 days ago when a whole queue of mages took him Burflick. It was supposed to say spell learned. Amber-colored, cheerful, with a little flourish. This was white and plain, and it said, Technique comprehended, charge separation, tier I. Mana efficiency, 214%. He stared at it. He opened his spellbook interface. There, under a category heading he had never seen before, the book had grown a new section, quietly, the way software grows a new menu after an update you didn't read the notes for. The section was titled Principles, and it contained one entry, and the entry was not a spell. It had no cast button, no cooldown, no mana cost listed. It read in its entirety. Charge separation, tier IA difference made deliberately. What the world does about it is the world's business. 214% efficiency. Ethan said out loud, to no one. That's not a number this game uses. He'd read the wikis. Void's numbers were tidy. 100% base, plus 5% per talent rank, gear in clean increments. Every number in the game had the fingerprints of a spreadsheet on it. 214% had the fingerprints of something else, of a measurement. It looked less like a stat and more like a lab result. He cast it again, deliberately this time. Attention on the grain, the slope, the price difference, tick, the thread of light. A tiny wisp of ozone smell that the game absolutely did not need to simulate and had simulated anyway. His mana bar had moved so little he had to squint to see it. Okay, he said to the mountain, to the 2 moons, to whatever sound designer had put ozone into the air for an audience of 1. Okay, what are you? He found Aldrich at the observatory bench above the terrace. The old man kept hours, wandering the tutorial zone on some schedule of his own that no wiki documented, because no wiki had ever needed to document where a tutorial NPC went at night. Ethan didn't say anything. He held up his hand, set the slope, and let the world erase a difference. Tick, blue-white, hair-thin, gone. Aldrich looked at the afterimage for a long moment. Longer, in fact, than an NPC had any reason to look at anything. 4 days. The old man said. The last time I taught this the long way, it took considerably longer. The sentence went by like a car with something wrong in the engine. Ethan heard it, filed it, kept going. The last time. Later, that sentence would matter enormously. Tonight he had better questions. It's too cheap, Ethan said. The mana, assisted in Burflick, costs 11 points a cast, I checked. This costs nothing. 2, maybe. Why would the hard way be cheaper? Every game ever made prices convenience at a discount and mastery at a premium. This is backwards. Is it? Aldrich said. You wrote invoices before this, you told me. When a man hires a scribe to write his letters, he pays the scribe. Every letter forever. You have merely. The old man's mouth did something that was not quite a smile. Learned your letters. The seal is a scribe. The seal is a scribe, a courier, a notary, and a bodyguard, and every one of them bills you. The guild finds this arrangement very agreeable. The guild. Aldrich added, with that dryness again. Did not design it. It merely stopped asking how it worked some generations ago. Institutions do that. It is not malice. It is bookkeeping. Ethan turned the thread of light over in his mind. 214%. A lab result. An economy where understanding was the only currency that compounded. The other magi. He said slowly. If they knew it was like this, one principle, and the costs just fall. They were all told. Aldrich said. Every one of them, on their first night, on that terrace. I'm required to offer the lesson before the seal. He gazed down the mountainside, at the valley, at the little lights. Thousands of players down there. Millions across the servers. You are the 7th person to hear it to the end. Ethan blinked. This expansion. Ever, said Master Aldrich, and stood, and straightened his robes. Bring the wool tomorrow. If you can make a difference, you can make a bigger difference, and then we will talk about why the sky does it better than you. He walked off along the observatory path, an old man in no hurry, and the 2 moons lit the rings of the brass instrument at his belt. Ethan sat down on the bench and did not log out for another 3 hours. He made differences. Small ones, then less small ones. Tick, tick, tick. Blue threads in the dark, each one cheaper than the last as his attention learned the shape of the slope, and somewhere beneath the joy of it, and it was joy, the inverter joy, the locked box opening joy, more of it than he'd felt in years. A small engineering voice in the back of his skull had opened a file and begun, quietly taking notes. Item 1, it wrote, the efficiency number has decimal places. Games don't measure. Games assign. Item 2, he said. The last time I taught this. Tutorial NPCs reset. They don't have last times. Item 3, 7, ever, someone is counting. He closed the file. The design review was in 5 hours. Above the mountains of a world that was, obviously, nothing but very good graphics, the first of the 2 moons began to set. In his bedroom, on its stand, the headset's status light blinked once, amber, like an eye deciding not to say anything yet.